Hey everybody, this is Petey from the Spin Rack. We also have,
Calvin Ellis, ready to rock.
well, with the success of the last Ronin, and this is an avenue that the producers have yet to use yet, since it's been kids friendly. Basically, with this success in comic books, and they've been putting out more comic books from IDW.
Uh-oh.
What's up?
No, as soon as you said it had been kid friendly, you know what that means with the left.
Yeah. Well, I think it's an avenue that they haven't done. They're gonna do a movie, a live action, rated R, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, right? And
Mm,
hmm? Oh, you
I don't know.
sound skeptical.
I don't know. Well, in the comic run is one thing, but the overwhelming popularity of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is the fact that it was kid friendly. You know, it was kid friendly to the point when I when I was the cartoon is what really puts Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on the map. That's where most people actually tune into it, and that is overwhelmingly kid friendly to the point that when I was watching the cartoon, I was like, I don't care about this stuff. And then when I finally got my hands on the comic, I was like, this is very different than what I'm seeing in the cartoon. But it's the kid friendly stuff that is overwhelmingly responsible for the success of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on in terms of multimedia. So we'll see. We'll see. Because my only where I am a bit cautious is that if it goes and it's successful, you know how Hollywood is. Oh, they like it adult. We're going to be double adult in the next one. We want, they like this. We're going to even be darker. And
Hmm.
then they get away from what's actually been successful. And with the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, I thought that was a very good balance of kid friendly, but definitely tacking closer to what the original comic was in terms of the seriousness that the original comic was being portrayed with. I mean, as serious you can be with anthropomorphic, characters.
Hmm. Yeah, it's at the same time I do feel this is as far as live action or movies, because you can see when I got was it Michael Bay doing the Turtles, and he turned it to Ninja Turtles. They're trying to keep the kid friendly, but he was trying to see if there was another avenue to go with it. And he realized when there was such a backlash to the name change, and so with this happening, I just feel like the way movies go, and they have the cycle of movies where you go from one thing to doing obviously some sort of cynical thing or going dark. This is like prime. The fact that the book was already dark, the book was very dark early on, even though they were trying to spoof stuff that Frank Miller was doing. It seemed pretty straight if you didn't know the sources, and it was just something that you think Hollywood would look at and say, we can't wait. You see, with Batman, they try to figure how to get darker and darker. The Turtles somehow didn't have that, and that's maybe ultimately a part of the charm that they stayed kids friendly in live action and in animation. But with the fact that I'm trying to figure something for the original creators to do, trying to tell the last story. Who knew doing the last story would lead to so many more last stories? With the success has led them to do more stuff and find more avenues and the lost years and stuff like that. So anything that's success you can find there, but in Hollywood they kind of finally peeked over and said, "Hey, look, that's something we haven't done." And we get to we get our Blade Runner timeline as far as the location. We have one turtle to put into live action, and we have to do the other turtles only in sort of flashback scenes, so we don't have to kill ourselves. We can just we can kind of manage our money. Now it never works out that easily, but at the same time, and I think the latest animation one, which I enjoyed, they're saying, I mean, it is definitely a success. It wasn't like it's an animation, so like you can't compare it to how, you know regular Hollywood movies go, but it did well. So the last was it the Hollywood Reporter saying it was a success in this article. I mean, at the same time, it's just saying it kind of made its money back and more. It doubled its rates, so I guess you can call that a success. Huge success, no, but at the same time, I think they're just looking over. They see this buzz, and they had this comic company that's been struggling, has now got like multiple series, multiple editions, trades, this, that, and the other. A lot of buzz is going on, so you
Oh,
know,
what, Last Ronin?
yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, for IDW, yeah, they needed that because they had lost. I mean, oh no, they lost the Hasbro license, and that was responsible for. I mean, it wasn't that they slouched with that. They did a ton of books for GI Joe and Transformers with that license. But I think even stuff with like My Little Pony at the end of the day. But Hasbro Hasbro learned from being bitten by when they got into bed with Dreamwave, and they were like, "What do you mean we still owe you money and you guys are bankrupt? That's ridiculous." So they're like, "Hey, if these books don't make a certain hit a certain mark or hit a certain number, we pull the license." So that's pretty much that. And then they're over with Skybound and Image Comics right now. But yeah, Last Ronin for IDW, yeah, that was a godsend for them. So doing but it then goes into it's doing very well for them. But then it goes into what you said earlier, where this is the last story, and then it turns out it's not the last story. It's the last story because we're going to have some other stuff after it. Last Ronin 2, Last Ronin 3. This is like the Dark Knight Returns. Like, hey, the Dark Knight Returns. This is the last Batman story. No, the Dark Knight Strikes Again. No, DK3. No, we're coming back again at this point. Then you're gonna get into
That's
some
the thing.
nonsense like you get into some nonsense like with Generations, where oh no, Batman's immortal. Like Batman's immortal. What are you talking about? Yeah, there was an accident with the Lazarus Pit. It's like I get that you like Batman, but part of the appeal is that he's supposed to be a mortal character. The fact that he's immortal, that should be something that his biggest fans should be like, no, that we don't need that. We like the character, but we understand that there's going to be a finite run of stories with them, and we accept that. No, same thing over here with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. We're like, okay, how far do you go with how far do you well, this is with the comic, but we know the answer. They're gonna go as far as they can until people stop buying it.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, it's been kind of not since it's like kind of. It was great for the creators because I don't know how connected they were before this. I think Peter Laird was kind of out of the licensing of the characters. I think Eastman before this, a time before this, had kind of sold off his last bits of any kind of management of the Turtles. He just, same, I guess, collecting, residual money from the Turtles from, the producers, and then IDW having the license and doing them to do stuff with them, get them to do stuff for the comic books, and you hear them talking together on the kayfabe show, and you can see the brotherhood is back. Not to say that there was a big break, but they were doing separate things for a very long time. So, you know, and both trying to do, I mean, both tried to do a lot of stuff in comic books and create new avenues for comic books with their success. And of course, with freelancers, it's kind of hard to do that. So, but they came together, they had other creators work on the title with them, and they did like major part of the art part. But they did some art in there. So, you get this, and you got some more covers. You got a whole bunch of stuff, trade editions, all this stuff. So it's a lot of stuff going, and it is as Cal said, where it seemed like, you know, who's that guy? Kirkman has the GI Joe and Transformer stuff, and um, I don't know how the numbers are doing, but the books look good. So it seems like they were had.
Too many variants. My goodness. If you're a collector, you actually like Transformers, GI Joe. Good, especially with the Transformers, they decided that we're gonna go ape. You're going ape scat when it comes to these variants. Number one, I don't even know how many variants they had for it. It's sort of the same issue I had with The Last Ronin, where as a seller, I'm like, okay, well, what book looks like it's going to be the breakout, breakout issue, breakout cover or something? They were like literally down the alphabet. variant A through Z, and then you could even double it over. AA, AB, ZZ.
Yeah.
There were just variant after variant after variant. Same thing with the Transformers. Too many of them. Too many of them. And then I think that impacts sales long term because you don't really know what you're selling. Okay, you don't really know what you're selling because you have guys like me who are completists who want to get every issue, and then you have like your standard readership, and then after a while it's like if you are a collector, after a while you just get burned out. It's like I don't want to chase after all these variants, so there's just too many of them. I wish they would just cap them off at me. We're not going to go further than half the alphabet at the end of the day. But once you start getting to literally Q, R, and S, it's just too many.
Yeah. Well, with I'll just say my experience of I think wanting to get it, but not always going to the comic store. And I went to one of the local comic stores I go to, and knowing that I could probably go into the city and get it, I was in there or get a second printing. The person was like, hey, I have this dealer edition. It's $75. I was like, I just want to read this thing. I'm not trying to collect it and this. I want to see what this is about. So, and it's interesting that it's also not directly the same comic format or same prestige format. It's a little bit, tiny bit bigger. So, it's a as far as being someone who's kind of watched the title of the turtles from the comic book, like having and my brother having a couple issues, me having like one or two issues, and I think I always point out this is why like today's reviewers are different because the comic industry is so much smaller than it was before, but the way the reviews for the turtles were was like the thing is Amazing Heroes, and they were like, I don't really see this book going much further after this. There was a phenomenon and a rush for it, but this might be going the same way of all of the imitations. Like they were trying to point out how the black and white phase might not just end with the other books, the copies. It's going to end with them too, and they're so totally wrong about the turtles. It was ridiculous. So, but yeah, so
Well, but they, I mean, I don't think anybody else was able to do it again, but anyone who's, ever heard an Aesop fable or anything of that nature understands the appeal of anthropomorphic animals. So they had already tapped into that. You had, the martial arts aspect, which is also cool. And once they were able to make the jump to animation in form of a cartoon, that was pretty much all she wrote. I don't know how far it might have gone if it just stayed with the comic. I think they did run their course, with the comic book story. City, at War was pretty much going to be the end of the series. And I'm certain they would have came back here and there, but what really expanded and kept and pretty much gave the Turtles something that a whole bunch of other franchises would love to have was the success of the cartoon. And the cartoon was able to be successful because that, whether they realized it or not, that was perfectly packaged for kids.
well, I mean, that is the case, but at the same time, you wind up with being the crabby reviewer with the egg on your face. It's like, well, it wouldn't have
Oh,
worked
that's
other
well,
that's
well, then
which
well,
what they
a lot
were.
of
Which
times,
hmm?
no, a lot of times comic guys are very insular in terms of what they think is good.
Hmm.
And especially at that time, nobody was thinking that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was going to make the jump from a black and white comic was going to make the jump to an animated series and be successful. Now today, that's all anybody would think about. Oh, we got the comic. Maybe we'll get a Netflix deal. Maybe we can get some manga going on. Maybe to think that this would definitely be able to cross over into other media. I'm pretty certain that wasn't necessarily the primary thing, on their mind. Just making, the first thing and first foremost would be a successful comic. So even the reviewers are looking at it, with that type of stuff. Nobody's saying, well, you know what? It may have had its run with comics, but if this ever gets to be an animated series, The kids are gonna love this. All the kids who are, coming into the store looking for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles will be happy to see this. But nobody was thinking about that.
Yeah, but one of the things that and it goes to I think something I think what was it that Roy I think it was Roy Thomas was talking like one of the times that Jack Kirby came into the Marvel office and they were like saying, "What do you think is going to be next?" And it's like, well, he said, whatever's next is not going to be me, and it's definitely not going to be Stan Lee. And this is why they had all the success of Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four. And saying it's probably going to be like two guys in their basement figuring something out and something totally different, which is what the Turtles were, and giving us in such a big wave of, you know, of imitations that came with it. So I think that's the other thing to point out is that even though they were the other part that worked for them is that they were drawing from stuff of like Frank Miller, something that everyone was kind of a fan of, and so you have not the art style but the sort of the techniques that were used, so kind of especially the early stuff. So it's one of those things where leaving the creators at some point to figure out is, and the same thing with like same way Stan and Jack were. Like you look at the second issue of the Fantastic Four, which is most of the story is a great issue, but then when you get to the end, they win the story by basically showing the aliens in comic books. So it's like they were doing anything and everything, and then you say, well, how long is this gonna last? And then next you know, Kirby explodes and get Galactus and all that. You can't see that they were gonna do that thing from the other thing. So there's definitely a chance that they would have been at home doing nothing, and there's less of a chance of them having that creative burst. But who knows? That sort of thing. But also to say that the way you want your reviews to go is that like Amazing Heroes hated everything popular, like anything that had any success got pretty much torched. It was like not the arm, but it was like the younger brother of the comics journal. So it wasn't going to be nice to the popular stuff. It's going to show what we know about creating. So one of the things that I kind of figured when I started looking the same way with movie reviews, the popular stuff get like very heavily torched. And I always go to like Good Burger and say, what are you doing really going with a heavy duty review on this? But then, obviously you give the accolades of Schindler's List, but the more popular stuff, they get the torch, and the more indie stuff gets the fine brush of being able to see all the stuff that's going on, and not kind of reviewing to the audience. That's the thing that I always notice is that reviewers don't always go to what the audience goes to. So that nothing. I mean, I sort of was able to accept it at points because it would be like could be any book you like that was popular was going to get it. They were going to get they were get a lashing, except for possibly a Crisis, like I think. But I've had to look at it. I'm pretty sure they probably found a way to. If they didn't, they needed to do a very critical take on Crisis issue 4, which I'm pretty sure they didn't, but because Perez was pointing out the issues with that. But anyway, we got a thing now. The whole part is they had to follow through. This may take too long for them to do it, and some new people come in, and then we don't get the last Ronin. They just say, let's continue with the Mutant Mayhem. But at the same time, you got Spider-Man, and you got the Into the Spider-Verse. So you got stuff you can do. You can put the Turtles movies, the live action movies you got on hold. You got animation. You got the last Ronin. You cannot act like this is the new thing and just say this is another Turtles movie and we got the animation going. Don't try to make it into, and that's what I think could work for you. Don't try to make it into this is the next stage. Just say, hey, this is for you Turtle fans. You fans out there, here's for you. And Mutant Mayhem comes next year, rather than say this is the next thing. Because a lot of times, like same with Batman, which they shouldn't be doing 3 and 4 different Batmans because they've already done a lot. but saying this is the next Batman type of thing, where it's kind of okay when you have Brave and Bold, and then you got other Batman stuff, and just try to make it feel like, hey, here's another Turtles thing. Any last words?
They are not going to do anything like you just said. You know what they're going to do. Okay, they're going to come in, and if this hits it out of the park, they'll be like, "This is it. This is the Turtles going future." And the last Ronin will soon be will be the next one will be the second to last Ronin, and then it'll be the four Ronin because somehow the other ones will bring them back so we can get all the Turtles at the interplay. Uh, I don't.
As dark
I,
as you get, you can't kill Shredder. You can't kill Shredder in the
oh,
first
they'll
regular
do
dark.
that. They don't.
Huh?
They don't care. They don't care. They'll kill them if they think there's some money to be made. I don't care because they'll just bring them back if they like. Okay, we killed them. Yeah, we look all this money. Oh, we're not making any more money. What are we gonna do? Bring that Shredder guy back. Look, bring him back. There's no commitment. I mean, the Turtles are a franchise, but this is not a franchise in say like the same form as like a Superman or a Batman, where you have these particular films, and you really try to keep it to the point where, at the very least, for the four films that may have come out within the last 10 years or 15, if you will, that the story stays connected. I think we got that maybe with the first three turtle films, but then between the animated series and everything, it's just pretty much let's just throw it up and let's just make some movies at the end of the day. So this right here, if it hits, and there's a very good chance it will, because it's based on a storyline as well received, then we'll get a trilogy based on this. And then after that, they're going to have to reboot the whole thing because it'll be so far away from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that anybody would normally know and turn out for. I mean, and they'll do it. I mean, the last Ronin is supposed to be about. I think it's Raphael is the last. He's the last one alive.
Mhm.
So they'll do it. They'll come over here and decide, hey, look, we just make solo Raphael movies from here on in. This is what the audience wants. Forgetting that no, this is what was successful for the last 2-3 decades.
Well, you also can't forget that, the other turtles are kind of in his head. So they still have the dynamic of having his brotherhood type of deal. So and they come up in the story. So you're not
Yeah, they're gonna
fixing
cut
it.
all that out.
But you can't fix it and decide that, hey, the dynamic of the turtles is Raphael and just have him doing cool stuff. The dynamic is the brotherhood, and you mean this
You
Hollywood,
you know that
they could torture.
they're not gonna do. They're not gonna do that. If they
Hey,
think they can
I'm
sell this whole
saying,
thing with if they think they can sell this whole thing with one turtle, they'll sell this whole thing with one turtle. And even when they bring back the other three, it'll still be the story will be about him. It'll be like Raphael and his amazing friends.
well, I'll just say this to totally take the car off just swing it off the road is nothing can be worse than, it's not that it was, nothing can be the hardest take on the turtles in my mind, and I don't know all of them, is Image. Because Image decided, what would be best? I think it was Eric Larson who was kind of working with them because he'd done some things with them before. He's like, let's have them all be different. One of them has a robot eye. It's like, yo, where did this come from? Like, no, we need some Alan Moore type of stuff where somebody, I just like saying one loses an arm. That's not the case, but I just remember the eye. So they had even more differences. Whereas, like, the first one, I was thinking Image would kind of try to go to the idea that it was black and white, and you didn't have the different color masks to tell who was different. You had the weapons to tell who was different, and you'd have to count on the storytelling. And Image was like, let's go one step further past the cartoon. They're gonna look different also. We're gonna add some bits, and I think the first kind of not old school animation, but kind of digital animation. They tried to play off. They joked about it, where one of the characters had gone solo and he was coming back, but he was now a solo turtle that was handling business by his own, and by the end, he kind of, even though he was with them all the time. So I always go to the, as bad as Hollywood could be, whatever Eric Larson was doing was kind of trying to make them go through, like visible changes, so you could just see something that they're, hey, this is different. We can see they look kind of different. Everyone's going through something different now. So, but anyway, any other last words?
No, so I'll leave it here before we continue.
All right, spin a rack
Hey, we're out.
out.